And so the first thing I noticed is creatinine levels are through the roof. And so if you have elevated creatinine levels, there's a good chance that you have experienced some form of damage, and it's from taking steroids. Creatine kinase, we can see it's through the roof. Warning sign. What is going on? What were his testosterone levels? 24. He's crashed. He's a fake natty. Coach Greg, in today's video, we're going to be going over Hussein Farhat's blood work in order to determine, is the guy a fake natty after all? But before we get into that, we're going to go over some of the stats were just a little bit off. When I first did the natty or not, the stats are based on this. The guy weighed just over 120 pounds. He started training at about 19, and so by 19, I certainly think the guy's finished puberty. And by the end of it, he was 182 pounds. And so that's approximately 60 pounds of muscle that he added in 2.5 years. Not his entire life, but 2.5 years. And I'm telling you, there's no way any natural in the world is going to gain that much muscle in 2.5 years, unless perhaps they just got out of the hospital, they had muscle memory, they were in a coma or something. It just ain't happening. But upon watching his natty or not response and watching his brand new transformation of which he posted, the starting weight, it wasn't 122 pounds. It was 139 pounds. And so the total weight gain in all after 2.5 years went from about 60 to 43. Still a far cry, and almost no one in the world is going to do this, but it makes it a little bit more possible. And so looking at his chart, he's literally got it all laid out for us. Every month he shows his weight. Very consistent progress, but remember, he does in fact have newbie gains. That is the time when he's going to gain the most muscle. And so perhaps this guy was a gamer. Perhaps he sat in a chair and all he did was this all day long. And so the muscles, they had no stimulus for muscle growth to occur. Most guys with a physique like this, when they were kids, they were athletes. They were perhaps gymnasts playing with kids on the monkey bars, run around and so on. And so the muscles that they have, they're already kind of pre-developed. By the time I was 19, I was already a competitive bodybuilder. I'd been lifting weights, playing around, doing gymnastics, push-ups, sit-ups, and so on. And so you end up having that muscle. But for him, perhaps his muscles were simply atrophied. And so once he attacked the weights, it was as if his muscles were screaming for the attention. And so as soon as he picked up a weight, although training at home during COVID, the guy put on more muscle than last time. And so consider this. He would have been cooped up at home during COVID. It's a lot harder to go and buy steroids when you're cooped up at home. And most people, at least in general, don't use steroids on day one of their fitness journey. Not saying it's not possible. Clearly, perhaps he just went on steroids on day one. I'm going to do a physique transformation. The first day I go into the gym, I'm going to use SARM's MK677 steroids. You name it, I'm on it. And based on the results that I'm seeing, it's quite possible. Think of it, 42 pounds and looks like it was all muscle in 1 year. And so he's watched my video and here is his reaction.
Yeah, let's jump in.
Help, ready to get demolished. And so is that a little bit of foreshadowing? Does he realize that he knows I'm going to prove that he's a fake natty? The guy is sponsored by Gymshark.
I just want to clarify, I am no longer with Gymshark. I was actually so natural that they decided to drop me.
And so this is a point in his favor. Everyone knows that the majority of Gymshark sponsored athletes are, of course, not natural. And so since he's no longer with them, maybe he's natural.
I decided not to re-sign because I've always wanted to do my own clothing brand, which is what I'm going to be doing. And that should be dropping really soon, so stay tuned.
And so he's going to be doing his own clothing brand reminiscent of Alex Eubank, another popular YouTuber who made an incredible transformation, also had an aesthetic physique. But Hussein Farhat is far bigger than Alex Eubank. Remember, I've met Alex, and in comparison, this guy blows his physique out of the water. He's far bigger. The guy was 18 years of age.
I was actually 19 when I started. I started at 19. I'm 22 right now.
And so we have to correct his starting point was 19, not 18. My opinion, that just makes it that much harder. The younger you start, the more likely you're going to put on more muscle. Think of it. If you started at 15 before you finished going through puberty, there's a lot greater chance you're going to put on 42 pounds of muscle in your first year. Does anyone actually believe that this guy is natural?
No, nobody believes I'm natural, which is a good thing, I guess, for me. You know, it means that I did a pretty good transformation.
And so here's the thing. I've always said, don't take it as an insult if people don't think that you're natural. If people think you did it natural, it means you're not all that good. Anyone who has an amazing body is for sure going to be accused of being a fake natty. It's part of the game. So let's assume he has really good genetics, which clearly he does. If you add up those 3 years, it would be about 26 pounds of muscle, yet he built double that. But there are those 1 in a million cases where this is possible. The thing is he one of them?
I'm not saying it's 100% muscle. In the first 4 months of training, I went from 139 pounds to around 157, 159.
And so based on the actual stats, he went from 139 to 157. Remember, he was eating in a bulk. But in the first 4 months, he gained 18 pounds. But remember, most of that is in fact muscle, but part of a muscle, it's water. And so when you go on a bulk and you're eating any calorie surplus, your glycogen stores can fill up. If you just finished a bodybuilding competition, you were shredded, dehydrated, you could perhaps weigh in at 139 pounds. But 1 week later, or better yet, 1 day later, you could literally be up 10 pounds. No body fat whatsoever, but 10 pounds, and I would argue muscle. If all that water, glycogen, forms in the muscle and your muscles are swollen out an extra inch, for all intensive purposes, it's in fact muscle. And so, for example, when I started taking Turk Builder, it was 180.6 pounds. My morning weight now varies from 186.5 pounds to 189.7 pounds. And so I'm up literally 6 to 8 pounds on most days. Now, you're thinking, did Turk Builder help you to gain 6 to 8 pounds in a matter of 2 months or less? Well, in my opinion, yes. You're going to argue, yeah, but some of it's water. If the water's in your biceps, it's not covering your abs, and it's not covering the lines in your legs, and you still look lean, what the heck is it? Do I look like my legs have gotten fat? Do they look fat? And yet I'm up between 6 and 8 pounds, and that's in 2 months. I'm a 48-year-old man. This guy is 19 years old when he first started. And so is it not possible that he's up 18 pounds in 4 months? If perhaps half of that was water in the muscle? When you add creatine, do you think that creatine helps you build muscle? I do believe most people believe that is true. But most of that weight gain is in fact water that's inside the muscle. And so although he's gained this much weight, remember he is in fact on a bulk, and some of that is going to be water within the muscle. I don't think it's body fat, but it is a lot of water in the muscle.
I'm not here to say I don't have really good genetics. I feel like I have, like he said,
it's 1 in a million genetics,
because I'm 100% natural and I've managed to do this transformation.
And so what I like about this guy, he's not scared to tell you what he thinks. He's like, look, I'm natural and I have 1 in a million genetics. I don't know why I'm so good. I don't know why I've put on all this muscle, but I've done it. And if you don't believe me, I can do a drug test at any time. Just because you have gyno, it doesn't guarantee that you're on testosterone.
I've actually always had like puffy nipples. I don't know what to call them. I don't know what they are.
And so he doesn't have acne. He has great looking skin. But one thing that you will in fact notice is the formation of gynecomastia. And that is a warning sign that the person has in fact used steroids. And so what does he say to that?
I'm going to pull up a picture of me 2 years old over here, or I was maybe 1 or 2 years old. You can clearly see there's something going on.
And so you can see, as a child, even at 2 years of age, he does have the puffy nipples. And so it is obvious to me that the gyno was formed before he was a teenager. If he had no gyno whatsoever and then suddenly got it at the age of 19, well, to me, that would be obvious. And if we look at his blood work, it appears that he has high aromatase expression. He has naturally got a lot of estrogen. Everyone has different genetics. Some people have a little bit of estrogen, some people have a lot. And so during puberty, oftentimes is a time you'll see more people express more gynecomastia. Doesn't mean you're on steroids. And so there are, in fact, some unfortunate people out there that develop gyno even if they're natural.
Pull up a picture over here. I was maybe 15, 16. you're gonna see as well. Maybe I was born with gyno, I don't know what it is.
And so at 15 years of age, he's just starting to go through puberty. You can see he already has those puffy nipples. They're already there. And so I think he's defended his point, at least in my opinion, that he doesn't in fact have gyno from using steroids. Doesn't mean he's never used steroids, doesn't mean he's never used SARMs, but at least it's a plausible explanation to explain his gyno. And so are we to believe that this guy put on over 50 pounds of muscle in just over 2.5 years while being 100% natural? It seems like he's always on a cut. And so at that point I said, how are we going to believe that he put on over 50 pounds of muscle in 2.5 years? But now we know that his starting point was 139 and not around 122. And if you look at his first year of training after his cut, he actually went from 184 pounds at peak bulk to shredded at 165. And so 139 to 165 after 19 months, it works out to being 27 pounds. And so 27 pounds, certainly a lot less than 50 plus pounds and a lot more realistic. Although still exceptional and although still looking like a fake natty, we can't be certain.
The reason why you never see me fat or bulky is because usually I don't even film, unless I have to actually.
Let's be honest, the real reasons he's always cut is he has an amazing metabolism. He's got great genetics. Had you ever seen this guy fat? Look at him at 15 years of age. The guy wasn't working out, probably a gamer, and he never has a lot of body fat. And based on his blood work, this supports what I'm saying. He doesn't appear to be deficient in anything. Some guys, they go on a cut and they have very low levels of testosterone. They have no energy, they're experiencing brain fog, they can't get a good night of sleep. But for this guy, whether he's single-digit body fat or perhaps in the low 13 to 14%, the guy always feels good. And so he's the kind of guy that just is blessed, has great genetics. He can be lean, look muscular, put on muscle without struggling. But does he have great genetics enough to explain this much muscle? Soon to find out.
Probably haven't seen me fat. I can pull up a few pictures over here. This was me like at my biggest. I was like around 190 pounds.
And so at peak bulk, he was 189 pounds. He says, look here, I was a little bit chubby. He's still ripped. He's still very lean. The shirt's off, 189 pounds. Most people on a cut would dream to look like that. Is it possible that he's not on testosterone, but is just using hyaluronic acid?
Come on, bro. Oil? Come on, Greg.
Just because you glaze over and say, hey, come on, Greg, doesn't mean it's not happening. Most bodybuilders, especially at the Olympia level, guys like Chris Bumstead and so on, you don't think they're using filler. You don't think their biceps and delts are being enhanced by something other than just muscle. If you really think that all professional athletes would never resort to using hyaluronic acid, synthol, and so on, well, let me break it to you. Most actually are.
For this video specifically, it looks a lot worse than it actually is. I was using a Snapchat filter called Peppery. It helps you look leaner.
There you have it. Exhibit A. Did he not just admit to using a filter to make himself look leaner? He literally describes what it does. Did you guys not notice the gyno? It seemed obvious that he had excessive amounts of gyno that could not be explained other than saying the guy's using steroids. But he used the filter. The filter highlighted that.
And also, you have to keep in mind, this is me after a workout, all right? So the first picture I took, I didn't have a pump, and here I had a pump, pretty good lighting.
And so he literally admits it in the first photo, I didn't have a pump. And so it made him look worse. If you saw me at the gym after training chest, shoulders, triceps, and so on, after I rode the bike, perhaps you'd see the legs swelling out with veins everywhere. And I took a photo of myself in the morning, perhaps after eating breakfast with my stomach hanging out. You'd say, wow, Coach Greg has a GH gut. He's clearly on 10 IUs of GH, probably on the same cycle as Mike Israetel. Has a bloated belly, doesn't look very good. Doesn't even have a proper tan. But then I get a pump, I ride the bike, train some shoulders, and do a few poses. You're gonna think, Greg just hopped on a cycle. He's clearly on. Yet all I did was an hour-and-a-half workout, and I'm taking a better photo. In 2 weeks, it looked like the guy had been training for 2 years. This is not normal.
All right, let's be real now. Come on. This doesn't look like 2 years of progress, man.
And so, unfortunately, Farhat, this is actually true for many people. Many people who go to the gym for 2 years don't look as good as you after training for 2 weeks. Some people just have shitty genetics. Take most guys who ran the 10K at the friggin' Olympics. I'm watching these guys. They're perhaps a svelte 6'2", 101 pounds. They look like coat racks. If they train for 2 years, do you really think they look as good as you in 2 weeks? There's a spectrum. There's people with 1 in a million genetics. Perhaps it's Hussein Farhat. And there's guys with the shittiest out of the 1 in a million genetics. And so if you have the worst genetics out of 1 in a million, you could train for 25 years and never even look like his before photo. Guy at 15, that is the better physique than many people will have after 20 years of training. It does depend on your genetics.
The most talked about people in the industry are people that are clearly blasting and being honest about it. So why would I lie? Why would I tell you that I'm natural even though I'm not? What's the point of it?
Here's the thing. Even if he had cycled off, he'd used steroids for that first year and he stopped right now and he passed the test. Could he pass the test forever? If we test him again in 3 or 6 months when his physique is his best and he comes out natural, you're going to believe him then? There's always going to be some haters that are going to say there's no way that this guy is natural. I was in fact one of them. But remember, I said, show me the blood work. And if the blood work comes back clean, we have no choice but to say this guy is 100% natural. I would challenge him. Show us your blood work.
Let's do it. I'm down. I'm going to take an appointment today. All right. I'm going to go get tested tomorrow.
And so consider this. He takes the challenge and he does it right away. No hesitation. Didn't have time to go off. Didn't have time to say, oh, I'm going to stop what I'm taking. A month later, I'll do the test. He says, sure, let's do it. And he's so confident that he's going to pass that you got to think, is it actually possible? And so many people are going to say this. I'm going to play devil's advocate. Well, Coach Greg, maybe he just went on steroids for the first year. Clearly, he put on a ton of muscle, and that's a good point. He did put on a ton of muscle. But if he were to have gone on steroids for that first year and then stopped the steroids, he would have seen a regression in his physique. You're not going to put on 40 pounds in the first year, then go off those steroids and keep all those 40 pounds. But the guy since then has gotten even bigger. And so considering I literally was at the gym having a workout with him, you've watched the video going through the poses, the guy is an animal. The chest, the arms, the shoulders in particular, they're huge. And he has a six-pack, he's very lean. And so if he were off steroids right now, I don't think he would have that physique. It's not as simple as just saying, hey, I'll do one cycle, I'll put on 20, 30 pounds, then I'll go off and then I'll just keep training and I'll have a head start. It doesn't work like that. You go on steroids, you're going to put on perhaps 20 pounds of muscle, you're going to lose half of that, and then you're going to slowly build up over several years. The guy has not lost that muscle. I've gone through his entire transformation. There's no time period where I thought, he's off there. I saw him continue to make gains. Whether he was on a bulk, he was adding more muscle, or whether he was on a cut, maintaining that muscle, simply getting leaner. And so these all points in his favor. But it's now the moment of truth. What are we going to see? And so the first thing I noticed is creatinine levels are through the roof. Creatinine is a measure of kidney function. Are his kidneys functioning healthier than last time? Now remember, people who abuse steroids, it's often harmful on the kidneys. And so if you have elevated creatinine levels, there's a good chance that you have experienced some form of damage and it's from taking steroids. And his levels are through the roof. It's not proof that he's taking anything, but it's at least something to keep an eye on. But the good news is there's only his creatinine levels that are out of the ref range during that general biochemistry. All other values are in the green. And so if he were in fact on steroids, he most likely would have something else out of the reference range. Next, creatine kinase. We can see it's through the roof. It's 449. It's not a yellow dot. It's a red warning sign. What is going on? Does he have rhabdomyolysis? We don't know. Well, here's the thing. That is a measure of muscle damage. The guy goes to the gym and does nearly every set to failure. I was at the gym talking to him. Hey, how many sets do you do to failure? Pretty much all of them. And so do you not think that's going to cause some muscle damage? And from personal experience, mine is always at least that high or even greater. I've had it over 2,000. And so that is just a normal occurrence from training harder than last time. Now, next up, let us see what are his IGF-1 levels. 35, exactly right down in the middle, in the green. And so essentially 100% normal. If this guy were taking MK677 growth hormone and so on, it wouldn't be in the norm. It would be way higher. And so because of that, we can conclude there ain't no MK677. What about orals? Look at his AST and ALT. It's in the normal, in the green. This guy appears he's not even drinking alcohol. And so he's not on orals, he's not on MK677. What else could he be on? Well, in terms of, well, perhaps he just hopped off. He stopped about a week ago. The albumin levels are also in the green. And so that is more a measure of long-term damage to the liver. And next, FSH and LH, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. When you're on performance enhancing drugs, they crash. Your body no longer needs to produce testosterone. Think of it. You're getting it from an exogenous source, and so your balls, they go on vacation. They shrink down. And so it's not an OnlyFans channel, and so I'm not going to have him send me a picture of his downstairs. But because of the results, I'm going to say they're of normal size. Hey, perhaps you could ask his special friend who's perhaps seen those things, but I personally can attest to the size of the downstairs. And so notice in his recovery, if he in fact was on steroids, that the LH is higher than the FSH. This would be the exact opposite. And so if he had formerly been using steroids, we would have seen FSH higher than the LH. Next, SHBG, it's 28.4. That is in the reference range. When you're on, for example, HRT, it's going to be in the toilet. And so also when you're dieting too hard, your SHBG, it normally goes a lot higher. You remember Vitruvian Physique? I went over his blood work and it was through the roof. That is because the guy was dieting for a bodybuilding competition. And so in comparison to a guy like Vitruvian Physique, this 22-year-old is far, far superior. He would beat Vitruvian Physique without even dieting. He can walk up on stage and beat Vitruvian. And Vitruvian has what? 500,000 followers, does videos, been training for years. This guy, far greater athlete with only 2.5 years of training. Up next, the moment you've been waiting for. If the guy was on testosterone, it would be through the roof. And if he was on other drugs, for example, Masterone or Tren or something, the testosterone would be down. SARMs, any other steroid, it's going to cause your testosterone to go lower. And so what were his testosterone levels? 21.4. Nanomoles per liter. Remember, it's not nanograms per deciliter. You're thinking, he's the next Isaiah Miranda. 24. He's crash. He's a fake natty. If you convert it to nanograms per deciliter, it's 617. And so very good. Not below average, not above average. Somewhere within the norm. What you would expect for a guy like this. And so oddly enough, he said, hey, my testosterone levels, I'm a little disappointed. How come it's so low? People have been brainwashed. They're thinking everyone has to have 1,000 nanograms per deciliter. Let's say his test results came back and they were 10. If I look like this and I had testosterone levels of 10, I'm thinking I want testosterone levels of 10. It's not the number, but the results. How does he feel? How does he look? And his bioavailable testosterone, the testosterone that his body's going to actually use. Because remember, what good is having a lot of gas in a tank if you can't use that gas? And so his bioavailable testosterone, 11.24. Notice how that green bar is even higher than his total testosterone. That's the testosterone he's using. That's in the high normal. And so that is the testosterone he's using. That is what's causing him to put on all that size. And so despite the fact that he's natural, his testosterone levels are as high as many people on HRT. And so this is a very good blood work result. Certainly indicative of a guy that could put on all this muscle. One more thing. Cholesterol. When you're on steroids, HRT even, oftentimes your HDL is going to go down. Anytime I did blood work when I was on steroids, my HDL was very low. It was crashed. His HDL, it's right in the normal. It's at the middle of the reference range, and so no indication that he was using steroids. And one more thing, people are going to say, yeah, but he's on enclomiphene. If you were on enclomiphene, his LH and FSH would be through the roof, be very high. His in the normal reference range, and so that's normal. And what about HCG? If he was on HCG, his LH, it would be in the tank. His body wouldn't need to make it, and so he's not on these things. He's clearly natural. Based on the blood work, based on the evidence, this guy, 1 in a million genetics. And so let's see it in the comment section. Do you now believe him? I never believed him, but the proof is in the pudding, and we've analyzed it. The pudding being the blood work, and so what are you going to believe? We have to conclude 100% natural. And if he wants to keep putting on more muscle than last time, you know this guy, he's already gotten his newbie gains. If he wants to keep going, of course he can get Turk Builder and GO2 Max. These, the best natty supplements in the world. Code Greg, 15% off. Click the link in the description. Subscribe, click the bell button, comment to boost the algorithm. Don't forget to go and give him a follow and say, hey, I'm sorry, I thought you were a fake natty. I didn't mean it in a bad way. You're natural after all. Watch those 2 bloops over there. Don't forget the cookbooks and the Circle diet book, the training books. Also, don't forget the free diet and training program and join the 300,000 plus newsletter subscribers. Get the clothing line, get everything, especially Turk Builder and GO2 Max. And until next time, I am out.